Hi everyone, we're back, January 2019. Today I'm here with Jeff Cottrill, professional writer. He has written for Now Magazine, I Weekly, Exclaim, Toronto.com, yellowpages.ca, and currently writes advertorials and other freelance work. He writes for a living. He's also written a comedy that was performed at the Fringe 10 years ago. He is a spoken word artist. He's constantly on the scene. And today we're going to talk about is Nuance Dead in the Age of Outrage, moral policing in the arts? Because it just seems that there's so much you can say wrong and everyone is jumping on the bandwagon in social media, and it's quite tricky, quite controversial. And also he's got an album, and it's called, this album, NIT FENNY.
It's NIT FENNY.
NIT FENNY. We're going to tell you at the end of the show how you can get it for only $5. And Jeff, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you said to me recently that one of the things that bothers you is that nuances are often overlooked lately, and you've got a lot of experience. You've been on the scene for about 15, 20 years and performing for large audiences throughout the world. And you've noticed a difference.
I have noticed a change, yeah. I mean, it's always been there to some degree, but I have noticed it getting more so over the last 10 years or so. I mean, you used to be able to do edgy, material, and even if people didn't like it, they still got what you were doing, but now people take everything so literally, and it bothers me that they don't understand that there's a meaning behind that. Maybe you're being ironic, maybe you're making a different point, and just people are so quick to find some kind of simplistic moral error in whatever you're saying or doing, that they just miss the whole point.
Absolutely, yeah. They'll latch on to something. And, I mean, we're going to talk about a few things, film scandals and everything, but, we've got, well, anyway, you know what, let's talk about the film first, and then we'll get on to the Rudolph. I know you're seeing it on the screen here as a recent controversy from Huffington Post. But, I mean, yeah, exactly. The question is can bad people make good art?
Well, that's a question, yeah. I mean, the first people that come to mind, Roman Polanski, who did a terrible thing 40 years ago, and nobody is disputing that. But does that make him a bad artist? I'm not so sure. I mean, before we knew he was a bad person, we still praised his films. Chinatown was being taught in film schools for years and years and years, even after the thing happened in the 70s. So, I mean, the thing that we have to accept, a good person does not necessarily make good art, and a bad person does not necessarily make bad art. They're not the same thing, necessarily. I mean, John Lennon, it's become hip and cool in the last few years on the internet to bash John Lennon, because he wasn't a very nice person. He was, abusive to his first wife and to his first son.
Yep, Julian Lennon.
Yeah, that's true, but it's not going to stop me from listening to the Beatles or liking their music, because I know it can separate it,
Well, what's interesting is, Woody Allen is another example, and I have a quote regarding his film Manhattan that I'm going to pull up. But Manhattan, his movie in 1979, I believe, was considered a masterpiece, and you're saying it's seen so differently now.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of criticism now because, Woody Allen, has a predilection, or used to at least have a predilection for younger women, and he's been accused of pedophilia, and I'm not saying he didn't do it, but, people look at Manhattan now and they see kind of a simplistic moral condemnation that they can make there, because his character in the movie is dating a teenager.
She's 17.
She's 17. And supposedly he was, seeing somebody very young on the side in real life, but I'm thinking of the film itself. And what a lot of people miss about the film is that, or they completely ignore it, is that his character is embarrassed about the relationship. That's why he's trying to break it off. And that's why, he wants to get with Diane Keaton, who's his own age, and he has a lot more in common with. So that's a nuance that people completely ignore, or they miss, or something, because they're so quick to condemn him as a bad person, which he may be. But
yeah, but that's besides the point. We're looking at art. I mean, I don't. Again, maybe I'll get lots of social media backlash, but
maybe I will. Yeah.
To emphasize the point, in 2001, the United States Library of Congress deemed the film Manhattan as culturally significant, and it was selected for preservation in the National Film Registry. And it was his highest grossing, it was his second highest grossing movie.
Which isn't saying much because he doesn't really gross a lot
No,
in his
I know,
movies.
but it was it
are we
grossed
supposed to?
39 million. But either way, it was culturally significant. It's important in 2001, whereas now, is it still taught in film class?
No, probably not.
Yeah,
I'm guessing.
exactly.
Are we supposed to go to the Library of Congress now and like rip it out of the off the shelf and say throw it on the floor and stomp on it just because we don't like him as a person or because he wasn't a good person? Like,
well, then
does that change the art?
Well, even just that image makes me think of book burnings when politicians take over, and that is such a symbolic thing to burn the books of free thinkers, of radical. John Lennon, the Beatle records were burned.
Yeah, because he said the Jesus thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think literature or works by bad people still have value. I guess at least educational value.
Of course.
Think of like the racist Looney Tunes cartoons from the 40s. They have great historic value. You wouldn't release them for kids or in public. But, historically, that is a snapshot of the way people were back then. It has educational value.
Absolutely. And, I mean, even you look at the Three Stooges, you look at Charlie Chaplin, and it's true. And they were actually, something I heard on the radio about a year ago now, is how they were taking out the early books from the libraries where slavery was represented. And it's like, that is important. That's part of our culture. Now, moving though, I want to the viewers are going to see this 2.5-minute clip from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and it was put together by Huffington Post in December of 2018, just a few weeks ago. And this whole thing. Now, I remember the movie as a kid, and Rudolph is the outcast. To me, it spoke on a level of you can overcome. Mm-hmm. You can be the one that's outcast, excluded from the group, and actually rise up. Mm-hmm. And then there was this entire controversy. So should we watch the clip and then talk about it?
Let's watch the clip.
All right, let's play it for everybody.
Look at the beast. Look at the beast.
That should be
Oh, boy, stop calling me names.
Son, try it on.
I don't wanna. Daddy, I don't like it.
You'll like it and wear it.
Oh, but Daddy, it's not very comfortable.
There are more important things than comfort. Self-respect. Donner, you should be ashamed of yourself. From now on, gang, we won't let Rudolph join in any reindeer games, right?
No, this is man's work.
Now, there's one thing I want to make very plain. No doe of mine is going to be seen with a red-nosed reindeer. You'll never fit in. Now, you come to health practice and learn how to wiggle your ears and chuckle warmly and go hee-hee and ho-ho and important stuff like that. A dentist. Good grief.
Thank you. So that was the clip of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and it's unbelievable. Like, for me, I'm noticing that everything they're pointing out is either was culturally relevant at the time, such as, and is still, I mean, such as, his dad wanting Rudolph's dad wanting him to fit in, or so-and-so not wanting to, no doe of mine will be seen with Rudolph. But, I mean, that speaks to everything that still exists in society today.
Yeah. Now, the first time I saw that video, I kind of wondered, was this really poorly done satire? I was just wondering if it was actually trying to mock these social justice activists or taking... It looks like it's actually taking their side. Because everything, a lot of the things it pointed out, that's the whole point. That's the whole point of the special. Well, like, they're saying the coach bullies him, the father abuses him. That's the whole point.
And at the end, he overcomes it.
And I think, who watches Rudolph and thinks it's pro-bullying? Who watches Rudolph and thinks it's pro-discrimination?
Or homophobic.
Exactly.
And bigotry.
Yeah, I know. It's like, it misses the whole point.
Which asks, or, you've said to me, people skip over the nuances.
Yeah, they just take everything so face value or so literally that they miss the point.
I absolutely. I mean, they're honing in on these little snapshots, but that's not the point of the movie. And then, so one of your poems, Love Letter, you've read it in the UK, you've read it in Canada, you've read it all over the world. You've been reading it for over 10 years, and you've noticed a shift in how people respond to it.
I noticed a very quick shift, actually. I haven't performed it in more than 5 years, but in the couple of years I did notice a quick shift. It was actually going really well. The first bunch of times I did it, and I thought I had a winner.
Yeah.
And then I noticed, the first time I noticed the shift was when I performed it at the Canadian Festival of Spoken Word in Saskatoon back in 2012, and the reaction, it was as if I just stabbed a child or something. They were and it was just the one word they didn't like, and I'm gonna have the people at home guess what that is when I perform it.
Well, let's hear the poem, and then we'll see if people can find what the one word is, and we'll talk about it.
Okay. I could address it to you or to the camera. Or...
Yeah, whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay, all right. It's more of a monologue than a poem, I guess. But see if you can guess which is the word that offended people. It's not the one you may think. Hello. You don't know me, but you may have seen me at the lectures in your gender studies class, sitting at the back. They won't let me sit at the front. I've admired you from afar for a long time now, and I just wanted you to know that I think you are incredibly beautiful. But by beautiful, I mean inner beauty. Of course, I'm not objectifying you or anything. I'm not talking about your physical looks. Not that there's anything wrong with your physical looks. No, I mean, as good as you look on the surface, that's not what's important. I mean, the way you are inside. Not that I'm just trying to get inside you. No, that's not it at all. Not that that would be a bad thing. I mean, for me and all. And for you, too. Of course for you, too. I mean, it's got to be a consensual thing, right? You'd enjoy it, too. If it happens. Not that it has to. Totally up to you. Really. I'm speaking hypothetically, I swear. But my point is, when I say you're beautiful, I'm not necessarily talking about the way you look on the outside, or how much a hypothetical guy might hypothetically want to have hypothetical sex with you, such hypothetical sex being completely consensual and equal, and fully recognizing your right to whatever orgasms you may feel entitled to. What I'm really talking about is your inner beauty. Your personality. Your soul. No, I'm not religious. Not at all. No dogmatic oppression from this guy, I swear. Nobody's forcing you to dress modestly or cook anything or abstain from premarital sex or even get married. Hell, if you even want to experiment with homosexuality, hey, that's fine with me. I'll never object to you making out with other women. Not that I just want to watch you make out with other women. I was talking about all the demeaning sexist religious rules and practices, like wearing a burqa or cleaning a house or anything. You don't have to do any of that stuff, unless you really want to, because you have the absolute right to any spiritual practice you want. You should even be able to become a priest if that's what you want to be. It's all your choice. Oh, and as for choice, I mean, that goes for everything. Really, it's your uterus and you can do whatever you want with it. I mean, who needs babies anyway? Unless you like babies. I mean, if you're digging that maternal instinct, babies are great when they're happy and cute and when they're not screaming. Unless they're screaming for justice. But all I'm trying to say is that you are very beautiful. But beautiful in a way that bears no relevance whatever to your physical appearance, nor to society's unfair expectations of how you should maintain your physical appearance, nor to the consensual practice of sexual relations between you and any hypothetical man or woman, nor to the outdated ideological customs and attitudes that continue to promote unfair gender roles in our tragically unenlightened world. Please don't castrate me. I hope I've made my feelings clear in the most tender, compassionate, and romantic way I know how. It's just my way of telling you that I love you. And I think you are a beautiful and wonderful girl. Woman, a person, human. fuck this, I'm just gonna get a hooker.
Wow. I mean, it's provocative on so many levels.
Yeah, but, you know, which is the word that offended people? Hooker. Like, you'd think there's so much in there that's really, like, playing with the edge, and it's just the last kind of throwaway joke.
Yeah, there's sexism, there's objectifying a woman.
Yeah.
There's,
But one thing that I found that people seem to, again, we're talking about people taking things so literally, and I found that a lot of the reaction I got, especially when I did this for like the slam community, they thought it was literally me saying, my name is Jeff and I'm going out to abuse sex workers. That's how they interpreted it. They didn't seem to get that I was playing a character. I was putting on a persona. And when I did the same piece in the UK, I found they got that instinctively. They understood I was playing a character, and you know, I got those reactions. My first question was like, do you people even understand how a joke works? I'm not saying, you know, let's all go out and get prostitutes. That's the character, you know. It's a joke. It's supposed to be, you know, after all that, the character tries his best to be politically correct.
Yeah.
He just gives up.
He gets frustrated.
He just gives up because there's nothing you can say. Somebody will always find something. So.
And you wrote that prior to, was that inspired by the fact of nuances?
Oh yeah, definitely. But I wrote this.
You perform it for our viewers. Jeff is a fabulous performer, and he'll be somewhere tonight featuring at 8 p.m. We'll tell you about that in a moment.
Yeah, I wrote that actually 5 years before Me Too. But I could still see the direction that was going in. You know.
Yeah, that's I mean, I find it shocking, and I mean, obviously, British humor is a bit different. It's more tongue-in-cheek, dry, but. Yeah, you've noticed, that's not the only piece you've noticed, how differences in how people react to it.
That's true. I used to do, now like 10, 15 years ago, I did like 3 or 4 pieces that were, they were satirizing what we would now call toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
You know, I was satirizing, you know, jock douchebags in high school, you know, and those kind of things who like are abusive to both, you know, men and women and whatnot. And so these pieces, I would either play the character or I would talk about the character ironically. And I found, like, back then, 99% of the time people got what I was doing. Like, even if they didn't like it,
yes,
or they thought it was too harsh or whatever,
they understood that you were making fun of the jocks.
They understood that it was satire, that I was being ironic. I mean, but there was always that one, you know, I say 99%, there was always that one who took it literally and thought I was endorsing those values instead of, you know, like, making fun of them. And I was just depicting them. I mean, that's what it all comes down to, is that depiction and endorsement are not the same thing.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's where people lose the nuance. You know, you have depiction. Sometimes you have to depict something to criticize it or to make fun of it or to satirize it. You know, but, you know, I find, you know, with the Rudolph thing especially, like, again, they're seeing a depiction of bullying and discrimination and stuff. And they seem to be taking that as an endorsement.
Exactly. It makes me want to ask, like, have you not watched the whole film?
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, the end shows how it's so, I mean, it's for children, so it's simplistic. I mean,
now that said, even that video kind of acknowledged, okay, well, if you're different, then your difference becomes exploitable, you know, which is kind of an interesting point.
Well, it's true, of course. But I mean, it's how one deals with it.
Yeah.
I mean, the story's also about self-belief, about, you know, he continues. I haven't seen the movie in a long time, but Rudolph does end up leading the rest of the reindeer and being accepted into the herd.
Yeah.
And by Santa and everyone. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, but back to toxic masculinity. I mean, and then Blackadder. I mean, that's a British show.
Yeah, I mean, that's one and the funny thing is, with a lot of British sitcoms like Blackadder and others, what they were good at, and I think still good at, that making these terrible characters, like making you empathize with these horrible people, and even rooting for them sometimes. Like Blackadder is obviously Basil Fawlty in Fawlty Towers.
Yes.
What's her name in Absolutely Fabulous?
Jennifer
Saunders' character.
And
yeah.
then John Cleese plays Basil.
Yeah, and you know, Ricky Gervais does great comedic anti-heroes like David Brent and Andy Millman, and they're not great people. You wouldn't want to know them in real life, but when you have that distance and you watch them on the screen, you can empathize with them and you can see where they're coming from. And that's a wonderful. Roger Ebert used to say that film was an empathy machine. So
he's
like,
right. Well, writing is an empathy machine.
Empathy, yeah. Writing too. I mean, I think Ebert was thinking of film directly because he did that. I think he said that in a review of Taxi Driver, which is, Robert De Niro's character is sick and psychotic and violent. But when you watch him in a film, you can empathize with him.
And understand why he might act like that.
Understand how he got that way, yeah. And that's what art is supposed to do. And I fear we're losing that,
Well, that is a huge question. Are we losing the ability to understand nuances? Because the good art, good writing means you can get inside the head of any character, good or bad, and whether it's in a book, in a poem, depicted on film. And if, as a society, we're getting this tunnel vision, and focusing on, picking up on just one or two things, then we're losing the overall message.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you don't have to agree with the person, you don't have to condone the person's actions, but art gives you that window where you can see where the person's coming from and how they can get to be these supposedly terrible people.
Which leads to more understanding and a better society.
It can.
And I mean, we have another interesting topic here. Well, the moral policing. I mean, that's what we're really talking about. And Kevin Hart at the Oscars, like, what happened there?
Oh, my understanding is that he did some homophobic jokes on Twitter like 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Prior to his Oscar speech.
Yeah, well, I mean, and he was supposed to host the Oscars this year, and they didn't, I don't think they fired him, but he stepped down because of it, because the outrage was too much. And he was like, oh, screw this, I don't want to deal with this anymore, which I kind of can't blame him because it's really worth it. But I mean, he apologized for it back then. I'm not making a judgment on the sincerity of his apology, but I'm just saying he apologized for it back then. He apologized for it a few years later. He's, being hounded for it. And where has the forgiveness gone? Like, can't we accept that he's become a better person, maybe, possibly, or that he's learned something at least?
Absolutely. Well, Jonathan Kay wrote a really good piece when he was still editor, I believe he was editor-in-chief, but he was still over at the National Post. This piece goes back to maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. And he wrote a really good piece on how when things are put into social media, they're not lost, put into the digital age. And you can be 15, 20 years into your career and something is pulled up and your career is totally gone. And he was literally, in this editorial he wrote, he was reflecting on his childhood and reflecting on the fact that everyone is usually, everyone has done something when they were a teenager that was stupid, insensitive, whatever you want to call it. You bullied someone, this, that. You live and you learn from it. 20, 15 years later, are you the same person because you did one or two things, when you're 15 or 16 that were wrong or socially not correct?
And part of the purpose of art is to depict those things so other people can learn.
Yeah. Just because he was homophobic 10 years ago doesn't mean he is now.
Exactly.
He may have. And often people they'll meet someone, really like them, and we find out that they're gay, and they realize, oh, there's actually nothing different about this person.
Life is a learning experience, like for everybody.
Yeah. And absolutely. And I mean, then there was the Money for Nothing controversy, the Dire Straits song, which was huge back in the late 70s.
Yeah, I remember. That was my favorite song when I was 12 years old, actually. And it has that verse that often gets censored for, I guess, obvious reasons, where Mark Knopfler, who's playing like a hardware store, not a hardware store employee, but like a store employee, really, really working class. And there's a verse where he's seeing, I guess, Boy George on the TV or whatever. It says, "The little faggot got the earring and the makeup," and it's a really homophobic thing. And of course, Mark Knopfler's playing a character here. He's kind of mocking a character. Now, the thing that amuses me about that is that verse was also censored and cut out off radio in the 80s, but for a completely different reason.
What was the reason then?
Because it was a bad word.
Right.
At least that's the impression I got, back then. They were just cutting. They didn't care about homophobia. They just wanted to cut out a bad word that people didn't want to hear on the radio.
Keep it clean, whatever.
Now it gets censored because people think it's homophobic, and they don't understand, or at least it triggers people in a way that reminds them of homophobia, I guess. But I mean, the thing is, like,
he's depicting a homophobic
individual. Yes, he's playing a character. Again, he's playing a character. And, showing he's depicting homophobia.
Because it exists.
Because it exists.
Art is about depicting things that exist in life.
Yeah, it's not an endorsement of it, it's a depiction. So, and I guess that maybe that's too much for some people, and I'm not making a judgment on that. But, I mean, there has to be an understanding that it's a depiction, and it's not the same thing as endorsement.
I agree. There was a really good thing on CBC a few days ago. A lady was being interviewed, and I don't know if it was on The Current, but either way, and looking at the state of democracy, really. And she was talking about, populism, Turkey especially, and the rise of populism. And how even in Turkey there's very strong women who are able to navigate their way through society in a very, it's not matriarchal. The opposite word for matriarchy is
patriarchy.
Yeah, patriarchal society. Thank you. And but she said this lady is a professor. I wish I could remember her name, but she was speaking to CBC and was saying how once you get an authoritarian government in power. People get afraid to, freedom of speech starts to get declined, and that means the arts become suppressed because when you're in a democracy, when you're in a free world, a free country, you as an individual are able to, you can laugh at yourself, you can laugh at other cultures, you can make jokes, you can even make little jokes about, your leaders, the politics, the policies.
Yep. That's what satire is all about.
And that leads to free creative thinking, because that type of freedom is needed. When people are have self-censorship down to the T, where they have to even think about facial recognition, you have to smile to check into work, all these things. When you are self-censoring yourself to even just get by in the public realm to avoid. Because you can literally, for a tweet, you can be thrown in jail within a matter of 24 hours if you send out a tweet that's in Turkey that's seen the wrong way.
Yeah.
And are those freedoms being infringed upon? Because then art gets censored and it can't thrive.
Think about, not in Turkey, but here, you make a bad joke on Twitter, it can ruin your life.
Yeah.
Look what happened to Justine Sacco. Look what happened to the professor Tim Hunt in England. They made bad jokes in public and they got their careers, destroyed because people took it the wrong way. Now, I mean, they probably delivered it badly too, which is how it got misunderstood. But I mean, the point is you have to be careful because people take things so literally. They take things, they often seem to be looking to take things the wrong way.
Yeah, a lot of, I wouldn't really call it a joke, but the character who played Kramer in Seinfeld, I forget his real name.
Oh, Michael Richards.
Yeah, and he was getting heckled at a show, and then he said the N-word, and even though he apologized, his career was ruined. And I'm not endorsing that, but I'm just saying everyone has a bad day. And again, if we had the camera angle on the other, maybe if he's being heckled off stage, careers get ruined.
Yeah. Well, again, not just endorsing his action. He made a really bad move.
Yeah, it was a bad move.
Yeah,
but
and I don't know how racist he is, or
no, I don't know a thing about his personal.
And it's kind of a question like, at what point can we forgive?
And absolutely. And what's crazy to me though is I don't know what's bothers is some individuals are like Teflon. Trump. Those things that came out.
With some people, Trump is,
And
like Teflon,
it didn't ruin his career at all. He still got elected.
Oh, he got elected in spite of all the bad things he did, and now he's still doing bad things.
And he doesn't never even deny doing them.
That's right. He never doesn't deny it, and yet people still like him for some reason.
Which I don't understand. Whereas as someone else makes a bad joke and your career's ruined. Career suicide. It's
just I don't know. Yeah, it's like different standards people seem to have. Maybe it depends on the expectations they have of you.
Yeah, well, I think this was a fabulous chat. Is there anything you want to leave our viewers with? Now, I was
just reminded, actually, of, I don't remember the exact quote, but Alfred Hitchcock, in the 50s, he was being criticized by some people for the movie Rear Window. And people thought it was immoral because, it's about, James Stewart plays a character who's like, playing a peeping Tom on his neighbors, and he finds out about a murder. So people thought it was immoral because it was a peeping Tom sort of became the hero. And I don't remember the exact words, but Hitchcock replied something like, I don't care about that because my love of cinema is greater than any morality. And that's to me that points out, art and morality aren't necessarily the same thing. Does that mean we can't have art because immoral people sometimes make art, or they depict immoral things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think those depictions are needed quite frankly, for society to continue growing.
And I guess what we need to is a level of education that we understand the nuances. Like, okay, this is not saying you should do this, but this is a depiction to show you what goes wrong when you do this. And it's also a depiction to say, well, this person is still human, even though he's doing things you don't agree with. I mean, art's a complex thing. You can't make it that simple.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show,
Thank
Jeff.
you for having me. This was a lot of fun. Yeah.
And for anyone who's in the area in Toronto, Jeff will be featuring tonight at Arts and Letters.
Arts and Letters Club, yeah.
Arts and Letters Club, and that's on, I have the address here.
14 Elm Street.
14 Elm
It's
Street
not
in
too
Toronto.
far from here, actually. It's near Dundas and Yonge, and it's a private club, but they open it up to the public a little bit for Friday night events sometimes. So I'm in a show hosted by my friend Damon Lunn. It's his birthday coming up, so he does a birthday talent show. So I'm one of the performers. Kraken Not Stirred is performing funny, geeky pop culture music. My friends Charlene Winger and Dimitri Alexou and other people, lots of people performing.
Great. It sounds like a fun night, and it's a Friday. And your latest, and people can find, you have a great website. It's jeffcottrill.com. They can find videos, blurbs. We're going to put the info on the screen for you. And you can also email Jeff at his email. Reach out to him if you'd like him to feature or talk, and just connect with him. And you can also get his latest album for $5. He will happily send you a signed copy. Email him, find out how. And it's got 12 tracks of spoken word on it, and it is funny
Including,
and insightful.
including the love letter, with the uncensored version, because I had to censor that line after a while. I think I just changed it to, oh, screw this, I'm going to go surf some porn.
Yeah.
Which wasn't as funny, but it didn't get people yelling at me. So.
I like the uncensored version better.
Me too.
Yeah, and you can find the uncensored version under the MP3 tab on his website.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jeff. And
Thanks, Ivy.
it was a pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah, I had fun.
Thank you. And we'll see you again in February. Thanks for tuning in to the Artis with Ivy Reiss. Once again, I'm Ivy Reiss, and this is Jeff Cottrill.